If you followed along with the estimating training plan, then you learned about activity stations and labor costs. But what we didn't get into was if we wanted to add a new station and have that information show up on a report. In this next video, we're going to go through the steps on how we can get that done. Now, if anybody out there is suffering from report designeritis, beware because we are about to get in some data bands and tables. We're going to keep it super basic though, so if you're ready, let's go. Let's open up our activity stations. And for this one, we're going to go into Assembly Activities Department. Under the Part Handling Assembly Station, let's go ahead and change the name. Now remember, we don't want to change the activity station number, but it is okay to change the name. I'm just going to call this one Part Handling After Sorting. Make sure we hit Update after we make the change here. Now I'm going to add a new activity station. This one, we're going to give it a new unique number, and we're going to call this one Product Part Sorting. So the idea here is having these parts being sorted into a larger bin before then getting pulled as it gets ready for assembly. So we're going to sort the parts first, then the part handling is going to be for basically pulling the parts out of that bin and stacking them and getting them ready for the assembler, and then the assembler actually taking the parts and putting them all together. So product part sorting, we have the activity station name, activity station number 506. Each type, this is again just the reference, so depending on how we have it set up in the report, we want that to match. We are going to use each parts. Units per minute of factory time, we're going to say that we can sort a half a part per minute, and the number of employees required will be just one. So this is the number of units per minute for one employee of factory time. So let's say now we have 2 employees, then we would want to double that, right? Because if one employee can do a half a part, then 2 employees can do a full part. But for this example, we're just going to keep it at a half a part and 1 employee. The labor rate, just give it a random amount of $100. Any comments that we wanted to add here, and hit update. All right, so now we have our new activity station. Now we're just going to open up a work order that we created in a previous video so we can take a look at that report. It's just a base 1-door product. And now into the shop labor quote. And down into product assembly, where I would want that new activity station to appear, you'll notice that we don't have anything. So this is where it requires getting into the report designer and adding that new activity station. So we are going to get into the weeds a little bit here, but we're not going to dig too deep. We're going to save some more of that for another training plan when discussing working with the tools inside of the report designer. To get to the report designer, go to Toolbox Setup, Design Reports, and this is going to be the manufacturing report. So remember, we're going to keep it really simple. We're just adding that new activity station called Product Part Sorting and getting data inside of this report. And the first thing that we want to do is to create a new one from an existing. So we're going to select the shop labor quote. Now you have the option to select a new name. So I'm just going to enter new at the end of it, make sure it's something unique, and select a database type. And like I said, we're not going to get too deep into working with the report designer right now. We have a lot of great videos and documentation on our knowledge base on our website. But this is basically pulling in the different information from the databases. We have the factory database, the work order, and then the different tables that are inside of those databases. Now, because we're copying from an existing, everything should be set up the way that we need it to be. So just hit OK, and an existing work order. And this is the report that we were just looking at. Now, the next step, hit the designer button, and it opens up this completely different interface now, which for me, honestly, was like, I don't know, a foreign language. But like I said, we're going to keep it real simple. First thing that we're going to do is add a new data source that pulls in the information from that activity station. So you'll notice here we have activity stations 501 through 505, and we're just going to make a new one called 506. And just like we do in Toolbox, we copy from something that's already existing, make a couple changes, and so that way we're not having to start from scratch. Now we do just have a data band 1 name, so we're going to have to first change the name under the properties. If you scroll down, we'll have the name of that data band. And it's okay to change, it's not formula driven or anything, so just changing the name here, matching what we have above with just the new activity station number. Now double clicking on this data band gets you to this window here where you can see the data source, relation, master component, sort, and filters. Now the filters is really the only important one here because it looks to the station number. So enter the new station number, 506. And now up to the ribbon on top, selecting on the second page. This takes us into the report of the shop labor quote. So we have the data bands and the headers and footers here on this report. We're just going to scroll down and find the product assembly. So it's first pulling in the data from the activity station 503, part handling labor. And if you were to double click on this, give you a preview of the information, you can see it's coming from the activity station 503. The shop part assembly labor, that was activity station 501. And this one is giving us the total amount of product assembly time. So if we take a look at the preview, here we have the product assembly header, and then the group headers with that data looking to the different parts. And here's the data source parts below the headers. So all the headers above this data source are looking to this data here. So if we want to have another header pulling in the same information, we can copy this group header, paste it right below. This is just a text box, so you can double click in here, and we're going to change this to shop product part sorting labor. Now let's take a look at the preview and just check to see if that's even showing up on our report. That is showing up, but it's still pulling in the same information as the one above. The only thing different is the name. Now let's go back into that and make some more changes. So because we're looking to data activity station 501, we'll need to change this to 506. Same thing for the employees. Now the units, we actually don't need to change anything in the units because we're pulling in the parts from that parts database and the total quantity. So the parts still remain the same, but the time does change. Here we have it looking to 501 labor. We need to change that to 506 labor. But if we do that now, you'll see here that we're going to get an error. We have two errors that were found. And this is letting us know that we have inside of the text4 component, the DEC 506 labor is not a member of that parts data source. So we need to fix that. I know that could be confusing. So if we open up this expression or formula back up, we can see this is the issue, the DEC 506 labor. Now under the dictionary tab, we can go to new data set, select on parts, and expand that table. There's all the different departments. And if you're wondering why 502 and 505 are missing, because those are hardware activity stations and don't have anything to do with the parts. They're actually under the hardware table. So the easiest way that I found to do this is take something again that's similar and just copy it and make some changes. So if you double clicked on 503 and just save a copy and do the same thing again to the 503 labor, and now just make some edits to those. Selecting tab copies that name into the alias, into the expression, and now doing the same thing, creating a 506 labor. Now those two errors that we had have just been cleaned up by adding these two columns inside of the parts table. Another way to add a new column inside of the parts table is to right click and new column, or in this situation, a new calculated column. Now we need to do the same thing to the products table. Now I've already gone ahead and added the new columns by copying an existing and making the necessary edits. You'll need to make sure the expressions are also looking to these new columns. So for all the totals to update with the right data, be sure to do this to all these text boxes here. And once the tables have the appropriate information, you're good to go and ready to see if all the changes or modifications that you've made to the report are updating successfully. And now, checking out the preview, we can see our new activity station added to this report. We have the correct labor settings coming in, and if we're happy with it, we can save this report under that unique name. Back into the work order that we created and open up that new report. So not only do we want to see that the report is still working as we open up the work order, but also going to the activity station and making a change to station 506. Now instead of taking just 20 minutes to sort all those parts, it's doubled and we're now taking 40 minutes. So now we got to do something to cut that time in half. Since that one employee isn't getting better anytime soon, let's just add a second employee. But if we're going to do that, we want to make sure that we adjust the units per minute. One employee is still only able to do a quarter of a part, but if we added another employee on top of that, who was able to maybe do a half a part per minute, well, then we can add those two together and give ourselves almost a full part per minute. Now let's go back into that report and see if we got closer to that original 20 minutes that we had. All right, so we're a little bit better. We're back down to 26 minutes, but we did just add a second employee onto that station. So maybe just a little bit more shuffling around and we can get that pricing to work in our favor. We're going to go back into Report Designer and we're just going to add a new image to the cover page of our costing report. Now you can have this set up in the template, or you can do it per project. This time we're going to make a copy of the cost-based estimating report. And remember just to select on a database type before you hit OK. Now, because we're in the costing report, you'll notice here that we have a lot more pages in our report designer now. Into the customer quote, just double click on that image and you can remove the image, find a new one somewhere on your computer, and then just adjust the scale as needed. And if you want to put another image above that one, go to Insert, and then Image, and just create your window there. Browse somewhere on your computer and select that image. All right, well, it's not great, but I think it works well enough for this video. So that's just a little taste on some of the things you can do inside of the Report Designer. Now, when it comes to customizing reports, it may be pretty time-consuming. So think about reaching out to your account manager for some additional training or services to help take that off of your plate. Thanks for joining me in another lesson on learning about Microsoft. I'll see you next time.